All of this longer form content is made possible by viewers like you. If you find any of this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe, or even if you just like my face, liking and subscribing is great. Also, feel free to follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. I can do anything good. Yeah. The most recent first date I went on was over a year ago when I lived in the Sierra Hills Mountains. In a county so poor, the state of California will literally give you a college scholarship just for being from there and making it all the way to college. So me and this guy, we met at the only bar in a 10-mile radius. You want to know how culty I am? Okay, you want to know how I know for a fact that the Unification Church was started by the founder of the South Korean CIA and received protection from Yakuza back when Yakuza was still popping like that? Because on this first date, it was not the first date I've ever had. I have had many first dates in my life. I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do. Okay, so my hair looked cute. I had makeup on. She had the fit that matched the surroundings. She was comfortable. She smelled good, which counts for a lot in Calabama, where if you're not a tourist or a retiree, you work in the trades. We ordered drinks. Guess what my first question for this man was? So I heard from the friend of yours that gave me your number that you were a volunteer firefighter a few years ago, and you were the first on the scene on Thanksgiving when a mother and her daughter tried to swerve to avoid a bear and their car went tumbling off the side of the road, but one of them died in your arms. And then you didn't take any days off and you never talked to a therapist about it. Would you like to tell me more about that? First question. At the beginning of happy hour, in the middle of a busy bar, when it was still light outside. I mean, to be honest, it worked out pretty well because that first date turned into a very fast-moving 6-month relationship where we lived together for a few months. Like, he introduced me to his family over the holidays. He took me on vacation. I helped him articulate his emotions. I helped him resolve a bunch of, inter-family conflict that had been really bugging him for most of his life. I helped him find some better work-life balance. He helped me start a business, and he desperately wanted me to move to Colorado with him, but I moved to the Bay Area instead. It was a really stressful relationship because we're both kind of crazy and paranoid, and it was really intense. But we stuck to our word from the very beginning. We had both gone into that relationship agreeing that we would hang out for as long as it felt cool, and then we would go our separate ways. I went into that relationship assuming that I knew myself really well and assuming that I did not want to get married, ever. In fact, I was starting to think that maybe I never wanted to go steady with any one person, just because the idea of serious intentional monogamy freaked me out after I had to work so hard to escape a very strict subculture that forces arranged marriages and childbirth on people when they're too young. Not only that, but it's your soul is ruined if you get a divorce. You're supposed to get married exactly one time. Even if your spouse dies, it's really rare for people in the Unification Church to get married again. What I learned after living with someone who was not raised in the Unification Church is I'm actually not as afraid of living with someone as I thought I was. I'm not as afraid of more traditional family life as I thought I was. And I do feel like I could see myself being in a monogamous marriage and having kids with someone. And that really surprised me. And it kind of surprised him too. But I also learned I will never be a homemaker or a stay-at-home mom because I'm neurodivergent at this point. That's a word that I feel confident using. And I know from experience that if I don't have the opportunity to learn new things and go explore places that interest me, I'm going to start lashing out at the people I care about. I'm going to start feeling really trapped. I need a lot of stimulation, and doing a bunch of stuff in the same house is not it for me. So this video is called Sex Rituals in the Unification Church. This is very painful for me to talk about because I have a lot of trauma around it. That said, I feel like it is very important for me to talk about, and I also know how the internet works. I also know that this is much more likely to get a bunch of clicks because you're all incredibly horny on Maine all the time. So here's the deal. I was raised in a far-right movement. That's what the Unification Church is. No matter what you've heard about the Moonies, they helped start the World Anti-Communist League. They invested heavily in the Heritage Foundation. Back when Ronald Reagan was president, the Moonies helped smuggle cocaine, machine guns, and money to anti-communist death squads in Nicaragua during what is now referred to as the Iran-Contra scandal. Death squads, groups of mercenaries who killed everyone and anyone in their path to start a coup and to destabilize the legal elections that were happening in that country. They hid their activity as humanitarian aid. Now, obviously, I was not alive when Ronald Reagan was president. I didn't personally hurt anyone or shoot anyone when I was in the Unification Church, despite what a lot of people assume when they hear alt-right or when they see some of my tattoos and they see like how tall and white I am and how aggressive I speak sometimes. But this is hard for me to talk about. Talking about the ways in which the adults in my life gave me my sex education and controlled my behavior and controlled my identity. Before I go into talking about that, I do want to acknowledge some folks and clarify what this video is not. Palestinians and also the Israeli hostages who are intentionally being bombed by Netanyahu and the IDF, because the IDF has been intentionally murdering their own Israeli hostages, as well as tens of thousands of innocent civilians, for the sake of ethnically cleansing Palestine completely. The Zionist state of Israel has already started selling property, Palestinian property, as if it is their own. And because the Zionist state of Israel is a puppet state for the United States and other interested colonizing countries like Britain and Germany, they have already started divvying up the profits they intend to make off of all of the oil reserves immediately off the coast of Gaza. That is what this genocide in Palestine is about, and it is repulsive that culture and religion are being used as chess pieces to distract everyone from that fact. This is about money and resources. So in the same way that the new religious movement I was raised in was absolutely used as a cover to influence politics in many different countries, accusations of anti-Semitism and bold-faced Islamophobia, they are being used to distract people from what is really going on. So as a British, German, Ashkenazi American woman, I just want to remind you that Judaism and Zionism are not the same thing. In fact, they exist in opposition to each other because the disgusting and anti-human behavior of Zionists directly contradicts the Torah and cannot in any way be justified by the Bible, which explains why Jewish Israeli citizens, Jewish Americans, and Christians all over the world have been protesting against this genocide and demanding an immediate ceasefire. That's what real violence is. That's what real trauma is. While you are going to hear me talk about being trafficked for labor, and that did happen to me and most other Moonies, while you are going to hear me talking about Moonies getting raped, Moonies getting forced into non-consensual marriages and then flown over to other sides of the planet, I just want to acknowledge the only reason I'm even able to have this conversation with you is because for every dead Palestinian and every dead Moonie, there are at least like 3 to 5 more dead African, Latin American laborers in the global South who are being forced to die to get you the carbon that makes your daily life possible. So you're welcome, I guess. I have never and I will never in my life compare what I've been through to what the countries that have been violently colonized by my ancestors go through on a daily basis. And actually right here in the United States, in Appalachia, in the Bible Belt, in pockets of the Midwest that you don't see TV shows or movies about, there are people who don't have running water or drinkable water. There are people who don't have access to electricity or functioning plumbing. There are entire towns that are actively being poisoned by corporations who just pay the fines and then let local families who have lived there forever die. The United States was built on genocide and slavery. The United States is not and has never been the freest or best country in the world. And because I'm not ashamed of being white, and because I am not a spineless little snowflake, I can readily admit that I come from generations of colonizers, slave owners, murderers who justified their actions with a now very well disproven bullshit theory that based on melanin and bone structure alone, some people are more deserving of life than others, or that some people are more civilized than others. Sweetie, that myth of race was disproven 200 years ago, and it was invented by white people, my people, to ensure that slaves could never be free of their slavery, and neither could their children. I don't care if you think that slavery has happened all over the world. The transatlantic slave trade built on a bunch of pseudoscience that somehow white people are smarter and more civilized and what everyone else should aspire to be. That is a white invention. My culture invented that. And if you look like me and you feel the compulsion to sugarcoat history to make yourself feel better, if you feel the need to erase the facts to protect your precious little feelings, you're a coward. I'm embarrassed by you, and I'm ashamed that people can look at us and think we're anything alike. Just wanted to get that out there. Just wanted to, clear the air. I'm so sorry if this video isn't sexy enough for you. I have a hard time taking dating seriously when there are bigger fish to fry. I can't tell the truth about my life and my first 20 years in the Unification Church without addressing race and bringing up the fact that Americans are the only ones who use the term white in the way that we use it. That is a very uniquely American thing. And what I'm describing right now is a concept that you are introduced to if you go to a very basic cultural anthropology class at any community college. When I was growing up, I was referred to as a Westerner, and I was very cognizant of the fact that I was British, that I was German, that my mom is from Australia, which makes her British, that my mom is Ashkenazi, that my dad is white American but from Germany. You see what I'm saying? Because white doesn't exist. White is a weapon of capitalism. It is a weapon of slavery that hurts and enslaves European immigrants, illegal European immigrants who killed Native Americans to be here, who killed Mexicanos to be here, and then made treaties that they broke in order to steal the rest of their land. White isn't real. And if that hurts your feelings, I'm gonna need you to take it on the chin. If you're really as tough as you say you are, and this hurts your feelings, I'm gonna need you to put your big boy pants on. Thank you. I would love to go into detail about every single person I've dated and all the things that went wrong that are unique to cult trauma, but I have so much to cover in one video. What I'm gonna end up doing actually is reading to you a couple things that everyone is being told about the Moonies, and then I'm gonna read you the literal sex rituals that are available right now on the Unification Church website that conclusively prove the Unification Church has never been Christian. It is based on Korean shamanism. It is based on the Korean pikareum rituals, the orgies that Reverend Moon practiced before he legally changed his name when he started working with the CIA. I thought this was going to be so much harder. Like, I had no idea that everyone was so bad at reading and Googling that all I would have to do is pull up readily available information on the internet and have a fucking read along. But here we are. Do I seem angry? Do I seem tense? I don't mean to be tense. And I've also noticed that people have a very hard time acknowledging an egg when they see one. Honey, I am yellow on the inside and white on the outside. When I start talking about things I'm passionate about, I give off very Ken Jeong energy. I'm just like, but did you die? And that's probably because the man I was forced to pray to 5 times a day, every day, the man whose picture I had to hold in my wallet and post up in every room of our house, he was a prisoner in a North Korean war camp. Okay? And he pretended to be Christian. He pretended to care about purity culture so that he could rebrand himself when the people who hired him to be a cult leader fucking died and lost power. He was like, I better find those Christo-fascists. Let's commit war crimes in the name of Jesus. Not only does my confidence and my obsession with discipline, not only does this throw off other white people I've tried to meet after leaving the Unification Church, it confuses my own biological family members who were never Moonies. So dating has been very complicated, but who cares? Sweetie, have you met men? Have you met straight men? They're very easy to please. I do not have a hard time finding dates. I know you expected me to be super shy and super bashful, super introverted. I am none of those things. I just get bored. I just don't say shit when people have already decided that I'm an idiot or when what they're talking about is really boring. Does that make sense? I'm so sorry that so many multi-billion-dollar corporations have successfully brainwashed so many men, women, and children in this country and around the world to think that they have to spend all of their paychecks on desperately trying to impress the opposite sex or the same sex, whoever they're attracted to. But like, have you met horny people? You're fine. Sweetie, sexiness is a choice. Sexiness is an attitude. I am 100% confident in my ability to get some dick or even bag some bitches, whatever I want to do. Did you die? Exactly. So without further ado, let me read you what any of you, looking at you, producers who have talked down to me like I'm stupid, any of you could have Googled this. And in today's episode of Let Me Google That For You, I'm up here at the Googles. Unification Church tradition. The tradition. This is a new one at tparents.org. I don't recommend giving them tons of traffic, but I'm just saying, at a Unification Church owned website, this is the updated, revamped version of an older book. I'm going to ignore that because Moonies have this understandable but annoying habit of being nosy chismosas and changing everything they've ever said, like going back and changing their policies on things in response to criticism without acknowledging that criticism to stay out of jail and to stay in the public eye's good graces because they have no loyalty to their own doctrine. So what I'm going to do is scroll down, as you can see, to The Tradition Book 1 by Chung Hwan Kwok. This is where we're going to find definitions of all like the holy objects that Unification Church members were told have superpowers. So if I click on these links, we've got prayer rooms and altars with their significance, detailed instructions on like where to put them, how to use them, how to take care of them, specifically how to bow, placement of the altar. So for example, place a clean cloth on the altar, small desks and tables, etc. are all acceptable. Place a picture of the true parents or the true family upon it. Other items which would be considered appropriate include flowers, fresh if possible, shimjung candle, and a container of special holy salt. So holy salt sanitizes objects spiritually. That's the story. And it's like there are many other cultures where you have to use physical objects that are imbued with holy powers. Typically, those are not Christian religions. This is a gigantic oversimplification, but when Christianity split into Catholicism and Christianity, Catholics take everything literally, and Catholicism is all about, you know, receiving communion and believing that literal communion transforms into the literal body and blood of Christ. Objects from saints have superpowers, that they are real, that they work. And then there are other traditions that are non-Abrahamic, other world religions or worldviews, where objects definitely do have superpowers, and those are considered more shamanistic. Objects that have souls, objects like amulets, you know what I'm saying? Like protective energy, objects that like radiate energy, but we're not going to get into that today. Suffice to say, in the Unification Church, the only person who is on your altar, besides maybe a deceased relative, is the true parents or Reverend Moon and his wife Hak Jahan, and prayers are made in their name. So to say that the Unification Church is based on Christianity, in my opinion, is almost identical to saying that the Church of Satan is based on Christianity, in the sense that Christians are the only people who talk about Satan. Satan is a character within the Christian worldview, right? Whether you're Christian or Catholic or Baptist or whatever it is, you would have to be informed about an Abrahamic religion in order to understand what the Church of Satan is. But is the Church of Satan Christian? Christians would say absolutely not. Members of the Church of Satan would say absolutely not. So to say that Reverend Moon and his Unification Church is based on Christianity is as inaccurate and ridiculous as saying the Church of Satan is based on Christianity. This is an entire booklet, as you can see, going into excruciating detail about which types of candles, which types of objects are used for which purpose, what the family pledge is, pictures of altars and what to put on those altars, holy days that are not recognized in the United States or in the Bible, how to pray and when to pray and what to wear while you're praying on those holy days. Again, this is an altar that would contain Reverend Moon and Mrs. Moon's picture, and then cushions for them to sit on. And it's drawing very much from feudal Korean society and feudal Korean aesthetics. At one point, Reverend Moon mandated that everybody in the Unification Church needed to watch a Korean drama that took place in colonial Korea. And he said it was because that's what he wanted the world to look like. So basically, a man who was excommunicated from the Presbyterian Church had his homeboys write up a very detailed instruction manual to make like an insular culture that is distinctly different from anywhere else, complete with dress codes and very blatant systems of control. So in the anti-cult camp with Yanya Lalick and Steve Hassan and people who believe that the Unification Church is not a new religious movement, it is a harmful and abusive cult, this manual is considered genuinely like a textbook of Reverend Moon's systems of control. Systems of control are blunt. They're commands, they're orders. Systems of influence would be things like cult members being chismosas, being little spies, triangulating against each other, always monitoring each other in and out of church, always just, being church aunties and snitches, but like times 10. Pairs of candles represented certain things versus individual candles could be used for different things. Preparations of a special plate, blah, blah, blah. So again, on Google, Unification Church sex ceremony. Now this one is extra controversial. This one they try to sweep under the rug. You will notice if you go back here and you go to the updated version, the 2023 version of the Book of Traditions, this stuff, instructions for the 3-day ceremony, that is not in the new updated version. You want to know why? Because it's weird, and they know it's weird. And I don't mean that to be in like an ethnocentric or judgmental kind of way. I mean what I said earlier, which is the Unification Church is willing to go back on absolutely everything they have ever claimed to stand for in order to live to scam another day. The Unification Church at one point or another has contradicted absolutely everything they've ever said in order to stay out of jail, in order to keep up with the times. So in the early days, they insisted they were not a religion, and then they became a religion. And then they said Reverend Moon had to be the person to choose your arranged spouse, and then they changed their mind on that because Reverend Moon got old / he was busy laundering money and investing in businesses and going to private orgies in Korea with a bunch of carefully selected women in leadership. If you want to hear a podcast episode about that, I will link it down below, because there have been other ex-Moonies who have seen and experienced more than I have because they grew up on the East Coast, much closer to Reverend Moon's family, and they have been interviewing other ex-Moonies from around the world, and there are right now a collection of easily like dozens and dozens of stories, first-hand accounts, of a bunch of crazy stuff that has gone down and traumatized people as a result of their participation in this group. But if you look back here, instructions for the 3-day ceremony, unofficial notes prepared by the American Blessed Family Department, prepared in June 1986, revised in 1990. This is basically like somebody digitized is the word for it. Somebody took plain pieces of paper that were typed up or written out before the internet existed and put it up on this tparents.org website for the sake of creating an archive. I'm just gonna, for comparison, I'm gonna pull up what politically correct sources sort of whitewash the Unification Church to be, and then I'm gonna read what the 3-day ceremony is, and I'm gonna let you decide whether or not there's a bunch of misinformation, like whether or not those two match up. Unification Church. Let's do Britannica.com. Unification Church, religious movement founded in Busan, South Korea by the Reverend Sun Myung Moon in 1954. Known for its mass weddings, the church teaches a unique Christian theology. It has generated much controversy, and its members are commonly derided as Moonies. Okay. Born in 1920, Moon was raised in the Presbyterian Church, which eventually excommunicated him for heresy. As a teenager, he had a vision in which he was charged with completing Jesus's unfinished work. So, is it a Christian theology if he believes he is the new Messiah and he was excommunicated? I'm pretty sure if the Presbyterian Church excommunicated him, they would disagree. But for some reason, Reverend Moon's brand of blasphemy is a unique Christian theology. Accepting this call, he began to preach, faced persecution from the government, and founded the church. According to Moon, the world was created from God's inner nature, which is reflected in the dual expressions of life, sungsang and hyungsang, masculine and feminine. The purpose of creation, Moon believes, is to experience the joy of love. Adam and Eve, however, sinned by misusing love or fornicating, and failed to realize God's purpose. In the wake of their failures, selfish love has dominated human existence, and God has sought to restore his original plan. The Unification Church identifies Moon as the Messiah who will implant God's heart of love in his followers and complete Jesus' works. Having married and raised the ideal family, Moon called on members of the church to follow his example and thereby participate in God's plan for restoration. Although this was last updated in May 5th, 2024, they decidedly do not mention the assassination of Shinzo Abe. If we look at who wrote the instructions for the 3-day ceremony, which is arguably what every Moonie is trained from birth to prepare themselves for. Like, this 3-day ceremony and the blessing was supposed to be the thing that gives your life meaning. The person who wrote it was Chung Hwan Kwok. So if I copy and paste Chung Hwan Kwok, put it into the Googles, Chung Hwan Kwok, born in 1936, still alive today. He's 88 years old, is a South Korean religious leader. He was a leader in the Unification Church. He is the founder and president of the International Peace Sports Federation. Unification Church founder. Let's read that one. More about Chung Hwan Kwok. Was close to Abe's grandfather. This was published in 2022. The former chairman of the Unification Church said Tuesday that its founder had a close relationship with both the grandfather and the father of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe amid growing public scrutiny of the church over the murder of Abe and his assailants' grudge against the religious group. So he held a press conference in Seoul following media reports on the assailant's motive that his mother's donations to the church ruined his family's finances, and he believed Abe's grandfather had invited the church to Japan from South Korea. Responding to a question about the relationship of the religious group and Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party, Kwok said, President Sun Myung Moon of the church was close to former Japanese Prime Minister Nobusuke Kishi, Abe's grandfather. The former chairman and reportedly one-time number 2, or right-hand man, of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, widely known as the Unification Church, added that he knew Moon, the church's founder, was also close to Abe's father, former Japanese Foreign Minister Shintaro Abe. Kwok said political leaders in Japan during the 1960s to 1970s were concerned about left-leaning movements in the country. Around that time, Moon released his anti-communism theory, which impressed the Japanese political leaders, the former chairman said. Donations from Japan contributed to Moon's activities across the world greatly, he also said. Kwok, who parted ways with the church around 2009, according to the media reports, criticized the religious group's current leadership. I felt a deep responsibility for the attack on Abe, as I've heard the assailant's motive is associated with a grudge against donations to the church, he said. So you'll notice that modern day 2024 summaries of the Unification Church do not include the assassination or any of the things that the man who helped write the Book of Traditions about are saying in public now. They are conveniently leaving that out. So now let's read what the 3-day ceremony is and what I was trained from birth to be excited about, what my parents went through, and what the Unification Church today conveniently pretends doesn't exist. It is a detailed bulleted list. This is in Harvard format. I'm not going to read like all of it. But basically, when Reverend Moon came to the United States, he demanded that members stay 100% celibate, not even like flirt or hold hands or build exclusive relationships with members of the opposite sex until their blessing. And then they had to wait 40 days after their blessing and remain celibate and just like be in a relationship, but not touching each other, not doing anything. You can like hug and hold hands during those 40 days. And then this is the 3-day ceremony procedure. This is a step-by-step description in exactly how the couple is supposed to have sex in the way that will like indemnify or make up for the selfish and impulsive fornication in the Garden of Eden. So during the first 2 days of the 3-day ceremony, the woman is in the position of the bride of the Messiah or the mother to her spouse. Like Sigmund Freud would have a field day. Therefore, she initiates each part of the ceremony. Through the ceremony of the first day, the man is raised from his position of archangel, being reborn as the son of the Messiah and his wife, to the position of sinless Adam in the formation stage. Because remember, Eve is blamed for everything. Eve was supposedly like a gullible dipshit who ran away from Adam and ignored God, and according to Reverend Moon, had sex with a snake / archangel, and then came and had sex with Adam to try to hide the fact that she just had sex with an archangel. And then they, at Eve's request, they went and talked to God. So Eve has to be the one to come back and apologize. Eve has to be the one to initiate this like reverse fall ceremony. Each part of the ceremony of the 3rd day is therefore initiated by the man in his position of Adam. The man takes the leadership role to restore dominion. Through this ceremony, they become one as the eternal ideal couple and husband and wife. And it's always going to be husband and wife, because what the Unification Church also loves to keep out of their online documentation is all of the times that Reverend Moon explicitly stated that anyone who is homosexual is worse than dung-eating dogs and should be lined up and shot. I mean, I can see why I would keep that out too if I was still working for the church headquarters in the education department and wanted to do damage control. Like, that makes sense. Procedure of the 3-day ceremony. Preparation. A. Selection of the place. Select as holy a place as possible. For example, one might use a Unification Church center, a house which belongs to a member, the house of physical parents if they have accepted the principle, or some other place with a good spiritual atmosphere. B. You must have a holy handkerchief, holy salt, holy gown or perfectly white clothes that are like traditional Korean hanboks and feudal Korean clothing, but all white, because white is holier than all other colors for some reason. 2 basins or bowls, picture of true parents, optional, 2 cushions to designate the places of true parents, because they're going to be in the room while you're fucking, and a shimjung candle. Holy salting. The room must be sanctified. To do so, begin with a prayer offered something like the following. And so this cult is so fixated on control and taking power and autonomy away from members, they tell you word for word how to pray and what to say in that prayer. And you might be thinking, faith, isn't that like Catholicism? Isn't that like anything else? Right, except the man who wrote this is still alive, and he left the church for a reason. And all of the first generation parents who were required to do this no longer force their kids to do this. What I'm reading to you right now gives everybody the heebie-jeebies. Just the level of neurotic detail and the similarities to something else I'm going to show you a little later. We are going to carry out the 3-day ceremony in this room. Please sanctify this room so that this place may become a holy place. Continue with the prayer of gratitude, etc. Then In order that Satan cannot invade this room, we sanctify it in the names of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, our true parents, and your name here. The room and the bathroom should be holy salted. And then he tells you where to stand. Sprinkle holy salt 3 times in a northerly direction, then sprinkle holy salt 3 times in a southerly direction. So this is pulling from like Confucianism, it's pulling from Feng Shui, it's pulling from many Eastern traditions. Sanctify all other things used in the ceremony, such as the bed sheets, pillow, etc. Process of the ceremony. The first day. Ceremony of the holy handkerchief, the act of purification. The purpose is to purify your body externally. First the woman does this and then the man. Take a bath and then clean your body with warm water. A bath or shower is okay. Thanks, bud. If there is some water remaining in the bowl, blah, blah, blah. Put on the holy gowns, stand in the positions as shown below. Spoiler alert, they don't have those positions, but don't worry, I got you covered. We're gonna hop back over here. We're gonna go to where it says altars. So here's some drawings of what these altars might look like. Family pledge service. This is giving me hella flashbacks. So we would do stuff like this on birthdays at 5 in the morning, but also it's like every day of the week at any time between 5 and 8 in the morning, whatever your family can handle. You're in front of the altar, you're doing full bows like this. Since the fall took place out of the sight of God, the photo of true parents plays the role of father. To begin, the man and woman stand before God and true parents like this, but imagine the kids are not there yet, and make 3 full bows. Then the woman takes a position between the places of father and true mother and seats herself facing the man. So she would have sat facing us in front of that picture and facing the man. Blah, blah, blah. She sits with dignity as the Messiah's wife and the mother of the man who's going to be born. That's a little weird. The man stands in front of the woman and again bows 3 times as in the pledge service. Then he kneels in front of the woman, remains silent, and keeps a prayerful heart, while the woman extends her hand over his head and with the dignity and heart of a mother offers a prayer. I don't care. To perform the act of love. I love this adorable euphemism, when Reverend Moon himself never used euphemisms, and we talked about love organs like all the time. To perform the act of love, the man lies on his back and the woman lies on him. The woman takes the initiative in the position of subject. The man cooperates so that both can succeed in fulfilling the act of love, aka she rides him, cowgirl style. After the act of love, both put on the holy gowns and stand in the same positions as before. The man offers 3 bows to the woman offers a prayer of thanks. It's okay, great. This concludes the first day. Go to sleep in peace. Sleep in pajamas and nightgown. Do not have a physical relationship outside the content of the ceremony. It's like, bro, can I live? Like, why do you care? The second day is almost the same as the first day. Follow the same procedure, changing only the contents of the prayer slightly. The third day is the ceremony for the man to restore dominion. It is the ceremony for both the man and woman to come together as the ideal husband and wife. The man washes first, using the holy handkerchief. Then the woman washes. After putting on the holy gowns, the man and women bow 3 times to Heavenly Father and true parents. Then they offer 3 bows to each other simultaneously. Then the man offers the prayer. He stands. The woman kneels facing him. Note the man now stands on the right side because it's so neurotic. They dictate whether you're standing on the right or left side, and they dictate everything because this is all about power and control and really not about the betterment of anyone's life, if we're being real. Contents of the man's prayer. Thank you for having me be reborn as sinless Adam through the first 2 ceremonies. I pray that through the ceremony today, we may become an eternal couple as husband and wife, and that each of us can have the triple objective. Oh my God. I have never been more dry in my life. I feel like Ben Shapiro reading the lyrics of WAP.
The backlash to Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion's WAP proves society still hates sexually powerful women.
I feel like I'm about to read the words, according to my doctor wife, pussies can't even get wet. According to the Reverend Mother, the clitoris doesn't even exist. For the act of love, the man in the position of subject lies above the woman and takes the initiative. The woman cooperates and responds to the man. And I appreciate the fact that they dictate that the woman has to cooperate and the man has to cooperate, because a lot of the time, couples that were blessed to each other, they didn't even speak the same language. I don't at all want to disrespect cultures that have had a long-standing history of arranged marriages, because there are plenty of people who have had traditional, like, arranged marriages with the input of their families, and it's worked out perfectly fine. It's worked out great, and they prefer it that way because it takes a lot of the hassle and heartbreak out of modern day dating. This is not that. Like, the blessings for the longest time in the Unification Church before Reverend Moon died, they were assignments. You were blindly assigned to people, and the point was that you were blindly assigned to people. It was a test of faith. Right? It was a test of your loyalty. You were supposed to have a really hard time falling in love with your spouse. That was the point. And you were supposed to be married forever and not able to get a divorce. After the act of love, both spouses should wipe their sexual areas with the holy handkerchief. Hang the handkerchief to dry naturally and keep them eternally. They must be kept individually labeled and should never be laundered or mixed up. So you can hold up a Ziploc bag and be like, look at it. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It's evidence that we fucked. This is our jizz. It's an heirloom now. Cherish it forever. And you know what's crazy? I found my parents' holy handkerchief in their sock drawer at one point. And I tried to ask them about this ceremony and they both just went like this. They're like, no. A few notes. It is best to mark the handkerchiefs before using them, so there is no problem of mixing them up. So there's a his and hers handkerchief, and you keep them forever, and it has holy wine on it, which is, of course, representative of Reverend Moon's sperm. And then you use it to wipe your own genitals after you're done fucking each other in front of Reverend Moon's photo, after the husband calls his wife his mother. It is necessary to do the act of love in the correct positions. Do not do the contents of 2 days in one day. For example, do not do 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. Don't be fucking too much. Fuck when we tell you to fuck in the ways we tell you to fuck. It is all right to start around the same time each evening, even if you finish after midnight. If the wife gets her menstrual cycle during the 3 days, she may get special permission to postpone the ceremony from her local blessed family department. So, like, people are going to be asking about how this is going. Random adults who don't know you will walk up to you and be like, oh, you're blessed. Have you started family yet? In other words, is you fucking? Notice, for the act of love, it is all right to caress each other. Thank God, because we weren't going to otherwise. Insertion must be accomplished. The couple should continue the act of love until ejaculation. But if it is difficult to reach ejaculation, the act may be stopped at that point. However, insertion itself must be accomplished. So no matter how uncomfortable and not attracted you are to each other, you gotta do it. You gotta... Them's the rules. An 88-year-old Korean man told you so. If insertion is not possible because the husband does not have an erection, the wife must take her husband's sexual organ in her hand and guide it into her sexual part in order to successfully do the ceremony. If the act of love is not fulfilled and it is delayed, it must be fulfilled within 24 hours, starting from the beginning of the ceremony, because God is on a deadline and the spirit world is depending on your ability to get it up. It is not permitted to use a condom or any other apparatus during the act of love. American Blessed Family Department, 4 West 43rd Street, New York. I used to live in that building. You want to see something else real fun that you could also Google at any time? How well do you know your moon? Boom. It's a Tumblr page, but it is also an elaborate archive of everything you could hope to know. No, I'm not going to sign up or log in. There we go. How well do you know your moon? Pikareum. First result, why the Unification Church failed. So this is a photo of one of the first Unification Church buildings and the sign that was ripped apart. Graham C. Lester is a former first-generation Unification Church member who was relentlessly researching the early days of the Unification Church because generations of members have been trying to get the word out as to how bullshit the Unification Church is. So here are all of his sources and the summary that he wrote up for everybody. This is the Holy Spirit Association and Unification of World Christianity sign in Seoul, broken by Moon's first wife, Sung-gil Choi, using the baseball bat he kept at home. She had caught him having pikareum sex with 2 women. So you'll notice absolutely no other account brings up the fact that Reverend Moon has had multiple wives. They often leave out HSA UWC and a lot of the first early iterations of what the church was. The Tragedy of the Six Marys, exploring the book and history of the Sun Myung Moon and Hak Jahan and family organizations. Moon's pikareum with 36 wives. Sun Myung Moon had sex ceremonies with the wives of all the first 36 couples. So here are all the sources. At the bottom, Chicago Tribune. The Moonies, government files trace church from sex cult to Korean CIA, March 27th. American Blessed Family Department. Oh, see, that's what I just read to y'all. The American Blessed Family Department of the Unification Church gives a good description of pikareum. It is known as the 3-day ceremony. Updated March 2nd, 2023. Here are many of the 36 wives that Sun Myung Moon womb cleansed. The starting point for complete restoration of the blood lineage is a man's seed going into the woman's womb. This is a speech given by Sun Myung Moon, and what's interesting is, like, he used to freestyle them a lot, and he used to give them in Korean a lot, so I can see why it would be difficult to transcribe them. But also, it's like, he said some really incriminating things, so typically, you'll find unedited versions of what Reverend Moon would say on the websites that are disparaging the Unification Church, and you will find pre-scripted, typed up speeches written for Reverend Moon by church members and CIA assets on the official websites of the Unification Church. So this is a speech given on October 13th, 1970 in Seoul, Korea. The realm of total perfection cannot be achieved without a condition for restoring fallen Eve. That providence must involve the womb of a woman. A person is born through a man's seed going into a womb. Where does the way of reversal begin? It's within the woman's womb. The condition must be established so that history is reversed in the womb. The starting point is the seed which exists in the body of a male. The condition must be established in which the seed within a male is united with God's love. So 1991 and 92, Pikareum Lecture Notes, Introduction. The lecturers were Mr. Yoshiaki Hiro, Mr. Kunio Sano, and Mr. Yasutomo Shirai. The 1-day and 4-day workshops took place at the Miyazaki Dai Center near Tokyo, where 300 members attended, and in about 4 other cities in Japan before the summer of 91 and spring of 92. The workshops were held because many Japanese members had heard about Moon's pikareum sex rituals and were asking questions. That is exactly the time that Reverend Moon came to America and was like, okay, everyone, fuck off. Go start home church, literally. Like, go fucking have kids and get away from me. I'm busy with these pikareum rituals in Japan. Also, the publication of The Tragedy of the Six Marys was anticipated. The book was an expose of the early history of the Unification Church written by Chung-Hwa Pak, who had started to follow Sun Myung Moon in 1949, but finally left in the 1980s. He wrote the book based on his 6,000 pages of handwritten notes and included 1 map and a 1955 newspaper article, as well as information about the early versions of Sun Myung Moon's theology. Many of the 49 photos in the book were supplied by Hyo-min Yu. He was one of the 36 couples who left and contributed to the burn book, basically. Hyo-min Yu published a Korean edition of Pak's book. The Unification Church failed in their legal efforts to block the book in either country. The book stood up to scrutiny as factual. The Unification Church held the workshops to inoculate the Japanese members against the now proven facts revealed in the book. Moon's sexual theology was too much for some of the members and they left. The pikareum workshops were terminated in 92. Interestingly, there had also been some pikareum workshops for members in Japan in the 80s. The following pages of notes and diagrams are based on the notes of 4 workshop participants who were at different workshop locations. They all left the Unification Church and shared their notes with others. Their notes were consistent with each other. A 1975 FBI report from San Francisco documents Moon's sex theology. In the past few years, 2 of Moon's sons, first Hyungjin and then 2017 Kookjin, have clearly and publicly on video explained the necessity for their father to perform pikareum, or chiwake in Japanese, sex rituals to cleanse original sin, on some for real Andrew Tate type bullshit. They're just like, he had to do it. His dick is magical. Okay, I believe in my dad's dick. Most of all, I want him to love me. That's why I took over his gun company in the case of Kookjin, and why I had many embarrassing phases in the case of Hyungjin, like writing a bald head and a strawberry. In Korean, pikareum means blood separation. Blood separation refers to dividing the blood from the satanic blood introduced by the fall of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. All mankind allegedly carry this sinful satanic blood. Sun Myung Moon taught that to reverse the illicit sex that caused the original sin, sexual intercourse had to be performed with a sinless man in a ritual called pikareum. Moon said Jesus was the second Adam and that he himself was the third and sinless Adam. Moon said that pikareum had to be done 3 times with himself to purify the women. This represented the 3 stages of formation, growth, and perfection. He also said that there had to be a witness for the process to be valid. The reason for the witness was to remove the element of shame. This is because Adam and Eve hid from God in their shame at having fallen. Sun Myung Moon personally performed pikareum with all the wives of the first 36 couples, which he blessed in marriage, as well as every wife from the 72 couples. Homeboy was busy. Hyomin Yu was one eyewitness. Those couples all became known as Moon's tribe, or the royal couples from the holy weddings. Purified men and women had a duty to restore others in a sex relay that should have expanded to cleanse all mankind. It's giving quiverful. It's giving like Mormon polygamy without the commitment. They're just like rent a wife, you know? Sun Myung Moon started his sex rituals in Pyongyang in 1946 and was soon arrested on moral charges. In 1948, he was again arrested for disturbing the social order with women. He was sent to Heungnam prison for 5 years for that. People love to blame it on the communism of North Korea. They're like, he was such an inspired, charismatic pastor that those dirty, rotten communists imprisoned him for spreading the word of God. No, he lived in an extremely conservative town that was Presbyterian, going through a Presbyterian and Baptist revival, and he was pissing everyone off, including the wife he was legally married to, by fucking bitches, and saying that his dick was magical and that he needed to cleanse everyone's womb by having orgies and making other people watch. People are like, Faith, how did you leave the Unification Church? I finally had sex with a regular blue-collar dude from Staten Island, and I was like, wow, this is so much better than some creepy person handing me a manual and telling me how to have the most uncomfortable sex of my life. This is wonderful. This is great. Turns out sex is not a big deal. There's nothing morally wrong with orgies. There's nothing, in my opinion, there is nothing gross or inferior or morally wrong with having multiple sexual partners and even having a sex party where some people just want to watch. This is not that. And it's weird to me that like people were given the runaround. It's like the witness has to be there to remove shame, and yet we're going to hire more lawyers than God to try to prevent the books talking about this from coming out. I thought there was no shame around it. You know what I mean? And that's probably because if you were a foot soldier being required to fundraise all day and never use that money that you fundraise, you were also required to have no sex whatsoever. Your soul had less value until you were in a blessed marriage with one person. So it's like, yeah, I can definitely see how the cognitive dissonance of these sex relays would have caused a lot of problems. But since that's what Reverend Moon was all about, whenever he got the chance, he would kick up these orgies again and keep them secret. It is 1:56 a.m. I am still recording this video. Was that as deliciously cringe for you as it was for me? I tried this new thing where I added music in the background and I feel like it's way too loud. I don't know if I'm going to edit it again. Let me know if music is helpful or not helpful. Please leave a comment below if you've made it this far. I just want to state for the camera one time, I have been to metric fuck tons of therapy, like just ridiculous amounts of therapy. I've done narrative exposure therapy, EMDR, psilocybin assisted therapy, ketamine assisted therapy, 2 years of weekly talk therapy. I used to avoid prescription medications like the plague and just depend on like exercise, time outside, and the occasional legal recreational marijuana. And now, after receiving a new diagnosis of ADHD that sort of overlaps a lot with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I've realized that ADHD medications and antidepressants are a really good combo for me right now. I am not taking Adderall or Ritalin. I'm taking like a non-stimulant ADHD medication, and that combo with an antidepressant is really good for me. The fact that I'm able to talk about this and the fact that I'm able to make videos like this is only because I've put in years of work like confronting really uncomfortable, deeply rooted beliefs that would have made me slam my computer shut and run away. And I still did that tons of times trying to make this video. That's why this video came out like a solid week later than I intended it to. I had like at least one anxiety attack during this video. And I also realized my sexuality for the first time during this video, like the making of this video. I just think it's important to explain that I did receive physical abuse during my time in the cult and in my family. I have never been raped, but this type of like neurotic manipulation of your behavior on a minute by minute basis, just constantly cutting you down, constantly micromanaging you, constantly like inserting all of this like intense language around sex organs and like how your ability to have sex or not have sex is going to like destroy all of mankind or save all of mankind. That is considered sexual abuse, just not in the way that we've seen it talked about a lot of the time. And I've also been physically attacked by my dad more times than I can remember. One time in particular where he threw me on the ground and put me in the same sort of like pinning chokehold as George Floyd, just not on my neck, on my shoulder blades. My parents would put on this like performance for other Moonies that made them look really like proactive and safe. So actually other girls who were like self-harming and developing eating disorders and were getting physically attacked by their dad, their moms would like send them over to my house thinking that it was safe. I would have to stand up for that girl, those girls, against my own parents. They'd be totally shocked. I would take us all outside and be like, grab the EBT card, we're walking to Albertsons, we're getting out of the house. And then I would have to like pay the consequences for mouthing off after that friend left, and it was like me and my parents again. I wish I could tell you there was some sort of secret sauce that cult leaders and cult members have that bewitch people, but the humbling fact is the human brain is embarrassingly hackable. There are about 6 or 7 different reasons any human being makes one decision. I really feel as though people bolster their own self-esteem in a really pathetic way by using othering language when talking about cult survivors. The main reason I'm even active on the internet when I could just mind my business and be entirely offline is because I have personally been insulted to my face countless times for being dumb enough to be in a cult, even though I was literally born into it and didn't have a choice. But it's like, I've seen stuff online, like people saying that anyone who is gullible enough to join a cult deserves what happened to the people who were massacred in Waco. People who are dumb enough to join a cult should be exterminated. They should be just the craziest. If you've ever been in a really uncomfortable or abusive relationship, you could also be recruited into a cult. There are tons of cults that are not religious. However, there is a lot of overlap between the systems of control and systems of influence that a very tight-knit, invasive cult will use, and the way that religions sort of keep people coming through even when it's not fun. My dad has frequently threatened to shoot anyone that tries to date me or my younger sister. My dad has gotten an entire family evicted from their apartment complex just because they were allowing other blessed children to come over and drink Coronas on their property. And I also believed that if I wasn't there to stand between my parents and my siblings would go through a lot more pain and suffering. And unfortunately, I was absolutely correct. I didn't run away in high school. I tried to be a good little Moonie and stay as long as possible until I graduated high school and then went off and did a Moonie program. So like begging for money on the side of the road was going to be like my way out and like my vacation from my parents' house. And then I decided that I was going to move out permanently by getting a job at headquarters. That was my main goal. Like, less than working for headquarters, I was interested in moving the fuck out of my family home. And I remember getting phone calls from my brother in tears talking about how our younger sister was 5150 because she had tried to take a kitchen knife and stab herself in the stomach. When I lived on the East Coast for a few years. After I went through a pretty major breakup and started having religious themed panic attacks when I became sexually active, I got talked into doing like a blood cleansing ceremony to restore my position as like a blessed child or whatever, and then got talked into moving back to the West Coast. And up until the moment I filed a restraining order and went no contact with my parents, they were still trying to rope me into family drama. I was still getting calls all the time like, your sister went AWOL, she kicked out a window, she is on the run somewhere, sleeping in a park or in a homeless shelter. Oh, did you hear your dad just threw a book at your mom's head again? So even though I kind of left the church when I was fired from headquarters, the church leaders over on the East Coast didn't like the church leaders on the West Coast, and I didn't know that until I had already moved. That was really what like forced me to start thinking about who I would be if I left the church for real. And even though I lost my virginity and started dating and drinking and making friends on the East Coast, I didn't start life over in earnest until I moved out of my parents' house for the last time and went no contact with my family. I've realized that like people are just people, and the things that shitty boyfriends or girlfriends, narcissistic abusers, cult leaders, dictators, what they all have in common is encouraging a divide in yourself, like encouraging people to get completely lost in like the left brain analytical mind. Carl Jung talks about it. It's so easy to get seduced and consumed by the way things should be and like this neatly packaged, really safe feeling story of your life and what it's supposed to look like. And it's, if I do this, then bad things will never happen. And if I don't do this, then I'll be God's favorite. Black and white thinking and cognitive shortcuts, like logical fallacies, they feel really good. They're really easy to do. And more than that, they create a divide between your intuition and your body, like messages from your body, and what you're able to articulate, what you're able to understand on a daily basis. Literally anyone can be slowly convinced to ignore themselves, ignore their intuition, and create a huge wedge in their right and left brain and sort of get traumatized over and over again to the point where they're coming out of their prefrontal cortex and spending a lot of their time thinking and making decisions with their animal brain, like their amygdala. There are going to be 2 more videos in this series, and then I'm pivoting, I'm goofing off, I'm doing something a little easier. The next video, part 3, is going to be Nazis, Yakuza, and the racist origins of brainwashing. The 4th and last one is going to be about the messy process of leaving, including cult hopping and what cult recovery can look like. So I just wanted to say, making this series of videos has become part of my cult recovery process, and I'm really glad that I waited to do it after going to literally more than a decade of therapy. It took 5 years of shitty therapy that wasn't the correct therapy before I started 10 years of trauma therapy and the correct therapy. I feel prepared to handle whatever the comment section can throw at me, tell my story in a way that offers something to other people. And it's because I've been able to spend 10 years processing all of this stuff. And even still, I discovered that I'm like on the asexual spectrum by making this video, which is why it took a week longer than I intended. I'm going to be really annoying and use some really woke language and say that I've discovered that I'm demisexual, demi meaning half, like half asexual, half regular sexual. Literally my entire life, as early as I can remember, I have never been turned on by photos. I have never been able to just like look at a person and be like, ooh, like I want to do stuff to them. With that guy I mentioned from Staten Island, he was a coworker. He was a field salesperson while I worked in the office as an admin. So we saw each other periodically throughout the day. We went out on multiple dates. We had many conversations. we exchanged songs and everything, and there was an emotional bond there. And then I was finally able to be like, oh, wow, spending time with you is much more interesting than trying to spend more time with cult members and convince them to let me back in the fold. So I've realized, like, part of the reason I stayed in the cult for as long as I did, besides all of those earlier reasons, is like, I literally do not experience primary attraction. Like, I can obviously tell when a person smells good versus when a person smells bad. I can tell when someone is what everyone would consider conventionally attractive by American standard, but it doesn't do much for me in the way that it really lights people up and makes them change their entire thought process and like remake their whole schedule for the day. That has never happened to me. I don't do that. It reinforced the belief that the Unification Church was correct for me. And I was very much rewarded by the cult system because it was easy for me to present as heterosexual and completely like asexual. I truly don't care about physical appearances to like a shocking degree. I have never been able to honestly answer the question, like, what is your type? I think in general, I definitely have been obsessed with boys and have been able to sort of have a romantic sexual relationship with men easier than with women or gender fluid or trans people. But it's like, I've also haven't had much of an opportunity. I think, to be honest, the way that I still have a lot of like alt-right mannerisms and like stuff like that, things to deconstruct, it can make other people who aren't straight men feel really scared and sometimes like unsafe to open up enough, in my experience. So I just wanted to share that with you. And if you've made it this far, are you mentally okay? Is you good? I'm not right now. I'm tired. I still do really like erotic things. I forget sex exists sometimes. Okay, I'm done. Goodbye.